Alright, so we just got back from Plant Bamboo over the weekend and we had a pretty epic time. We got a little damage assessment to do. So this coming weekend we've got the Daytona truck meet coming up, so we got to get everything back in order by the weekend. So it looks like I'm going to be doing a lot of this tonight and maybe into tomorrow. We ran into a total of 4 issues with the truck while we were at Plant Bamboo. First issue is the gearing. We got to switch that up. This truck has an SCS drop case in it, so it's got the quick change gears in it. Basically it's real simple. All you got to do is pull the old gears out, put the new gears in. Pretty simple. Originally, when we built the truck, it was geared 1.25 to 1. We drove it around a little bit. We didn't go through any mud or nothing, but just driving it in some dirt roads and stuff, it seemed like the truck was going to be pretty slow. So we went ahead and pulled them gears out and put 1 to 1 gears in it. Well, I think we're going to have to go back to the 1.25 to 1. When I got stuck in a pretty gnarly mud hole at Plant Bamboo, we got to where about that much of the tire was still visible, so we were pretty well buried. But there were certain points when they were trying to pull me out where I'd put the truck in reverse, I'd start hitting the throttle, and the truck would just kind of bog out a little bit, and the wheels would hardly even turn. Problem 2, we broke the outer case on this planetary hub. I don't know exactly what the hell caused that. I know we had cracked the little piece off of that before, back when we were painting the truck the second time we were painting it, and a piece broke off. It was just cosmetic. I had my buddy Steve over at R&D Concepts TIG weld it back on. And we thought everything was good because it was just a cosmetic crack anyway. Well, now it's got some pretty gnarly cracks, and I'm going to show you here in a minute. It was throwing fluid everywhere. It kind of put a damper on our weekend. We weren't really able to mud bog too much more after that happened. Third thing that happened is my sway bar busted. So this is the second time that we've broken that sway bar. First time we broke it was the first event we went to, Redneck Yacht Club over in Punta Gorda, Florida. In Redneck Yacht Club, I was going through a pretty gnarly mud hole, almost got kind of stuck. Started kind of working the truck back and forth. It was probably the second hole I'd ever hit with this truck, let alone this first time I've ever hit a mud hole with a mega truck. So, but I was trying to work it out and was using the rear steer and kind of walking the truck over to find a new line to be able to get out. When I was doing that, I think the axle articulated quite a bit and ended up breaking the arm off the spring steel on the passenger side of the truck. Well, now, we actually weren't even mudding when this happened. We were just cruising at Plant Bamboo, and I went to go over kind of it was pretty tall, it's probably about that high, a little dirt mound thing. Right when I crossed over it, I think the axle again articulated quite a bit. I must not have hit it exactly straight, and for whatever reason it caused that spring steel to rip right off of the arm. So again, we have a broken sway bar. The final issue I have to address is I blew out a couple of my speakers over the weekend too, so we'll be swapping them out as well.
So that's the crack I'm talking about. I don't know how in the world this happened. I mean, originally it was cracked right here. You can vaguely kind of see it. It was basically like right where my finger is. And it was split here a little bit, but they went ahead and TIG welded it back together and I thought it was fine. And it was just on this little lip. It had nothing to do with holding fluid or anything like that. Well, now as you can see, it has gotten substantially worse. We've got a big giant crack right here where the whole thing is basically just coming apart. And I didn't even realize it till I went to go make this video, but it's also got another crack right here. I'm sure you guys can see it. All the way down there. So this cover is completely screwed. Luckily I have a spare that my buddy Dennis just painted for me. So all I gotta do is unbolt this one, put some new sealant on there, and bolt the new one right back up. We should be cooking with bacon. We'll put that on the old souvenir wall. As y'all can see, that cover is toast. There's no putting that baby back together. And I still have no idea what the hell would have caused it. The only thing I can really think of, when I put this on, I did use an impact gun. But I mean, I wasn't letting her eat the whole time I was putting it on. I mean, I've probably 2 or 3 clicks and I stopped. So I think when I put the new one on, I'm gonna have to go ahead and probably just use a regular ratchet and do it manually by hand. Hopefully that'll eliminate that from happening again, but that thing is destroyed. So now the next step, just like when you're putting it back together from replacing the seals, is to go ahead and clean all this RVT off. So that way when I put the new cover on, I can put some more RVT and it will look like that. So now the next step, just like when you're putting it back together from replacing the seals, is to go ahead and clean all this off, get all this extra RBT off, so that when I put the new cover on, it will get good adhesion and all this nasty nonsense won't be in the way. I'm gonna go ahead and let the rest of that oil drain out too, so it doesn't come in contact with the RVT and keep it from setting up or cause any kind of leak. Okay, so I've got my new cover here. Went ahead and cleaned up all the surfaces here, got all that extra RVT off, put a nice new layer of RVT on the back of this cover. Now remember, when we go to install this, we do want to be mindful, because I no longer have that trusty mark on here that Jesse over at JH Diesel had put on here. So I got to pay attention. This little arrow points to where the drain is, and I can see the drain plug over there. So I just got to pay attention to that and make sure I line up the holes equal with that. That way I can always tell where my drain is. So I'm going to go with the assumption that the reason that previous cover had broken was because I had put it on too tight with the impact gun. So standard practice now, I'm going to go ahead and just tighten everything up by hand with a hand ratchet, and hopefully that eliminates me from breaking any more of these covers. So we'll see. Alright, so I went ahead and unbolted the rear sway bar. Just left the links, unbolted it right from the links, pull the whole bar down. Now it's time to get that arm off and clean it up and re-weld it. Just so y'all can see what's going on here. So this little bit of weld right here, it had some penetration, but looks like it ripped right out of the spring steel. So it's causing this arm to be locked up on here and not really want to come off. So I've been cutting this little edge. You can see my cut mark. Trying to just cut that little bit of weld off there so I can pull this arm off. Then I'll clean everything up real nice and re-weld it. Alright, now that I finally got the sway bar arm off, I'm going to use the grinder and clean up these welds so I can slide it back on and re-weld it. Okay, we got all this nice and cleaned up, got all that nasty weld off there, and got it slid on, got it tacked. Now it's time to weld the living shit out of it. Alright, so I just wanted to go clock the axle and turn it over so I could drain out any water that might have got in there while that case was broken. And I heard like a weird grinding sound. So I pulled that cover off real quick, that new cover I just put on. And it's got a pretty fresh gash right in it right there. So what that was from this guy spinning it around. I can tell because it's got a fresh cut in it as well. So I called my engineer buddy Brian, and we both came to the conclusion that that planetary gear is seized up on this pin for some reason. This guy is moving around just fine, and this guy's pretty rock solid too. So I think I've got two problem planets. So that means I got to pull out all these bolts, pull this whole outer casing out, and hopefully we can see what the hell's going on. All right, so it's about 11 o'clock, and we've came to the conclusion this wheel has got to come off. I got to pull that outer casing out, pull that planet apart, and figure out why the hell those gears are binding up. My poor neighbors, they deserve medals for living next to me, because they're about to have an impact gun going off on like an ass load of lugs. Sorry, neighbors. Oh, it wasn't too terrible. I got to use my handy dandy wheel dolly. My poor neighbors had to listen to my impact gun go off, getting all these lugs off. Got the wheel removed, got that outer casing off, and just as Brian and I suspected, that one planet gear is locked up on its pin. So I can't get it free. I'm gonna wait until tomorrow, take it over to his shop and see if he's got any bright ideas, and hopefully we can get it loose. Not the end of the world. Glad we figured it out though. At least we know what the problem is.
If y'all haven't had a chance, make sure you check out my video where I explain my little tire dolly invention. Definitely is a lifesaver. Case in point, right now, I was able to pull that wheel off, get this whole hub apart, and I'd say under 15 minutes. So before this tire dolly situation, there's no way in hell I could do that. It probably would have added another half hour to the ordeal just getting that freaking wheel off. But thank God we had the trusty tire dolly. So now we'll move up to the next problem. Well, before we do that, I'm going to show you kind of where we're at with this sway bar. Got it all welded up. It's not the prettiest welds I've ever done, but definitely not the ugliest. And I welded the shit out of it too. So it's got weld absolutely everywhere. Originally it was just welded on the outside and inside. Now it's got weld all over the interior of it, all over the outside. It's covered. Now the next thing we're going to tackle is the gearing. We don't necessarily have to tackle it right now, but what the hell, why not? Gotta live full throttle. It says it on all my freaking stickers. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna get into this SCS gearbox. I'll turn the lights on here in a minute so you can really see. All we gotta do is pull that back cover off, and the old gears will pop out, these gears will pop in, and we'll be re-geared, ready to go. Hopefully we won't have that issue with wheel speed when we get stuck in the mud again. All it takes is some 1/4 bolts once you get all the nuts off, and it kind of like presses this cover off. Alright, so it ended up getting pretty late last night, and I got tired and went into bed about midnight or so. So we've got that rear planet all apart. I gotta take it over to Brian's shop today. Hopefully he can help me figure out how to get that one planet loose. I got the rear sway bar somewhat back on there. I've got to align the blocks and everything, tighten the bolts up, and reattach the links, and that's good to go. Probably put a little paint on there too, because that's a little bit ugly. And I also got the gears switched out in the SCS transfer case. We were at a 1-to-1, now we're at 1.25-to-1. So hopefully that helps with my wheel speed problem, so that if we get this thing really buried in the mud again, I can still get my tires to turn. So it is early as hell. So going to work for a little bit, probably around lunchtime. I'm gonna have to run that planetary over to Brian's shop, and hopefully we can get her opened up. We shall see. We learned some things that I didn't already know about this. So you got your 3-planet gears. There's no bearings or anything like that. They're just press fitted into this case with these big pins. The pins are supposed to be able to just be pushed in with a little bit of pressure, and that's all that holds them in. You got to push them in at the proper angle so that this flat area here kind of catches the lip of the outer cover that goes over everything. So the issue that we're running into, just as I thought, is these 2 planetary gears are basically seized up onto these pins. So these pins are spinning anytime the planetary gear spins. Basically, I'm putting a temporary band-aid on it so that we can go to the Daytona truck meet. All I did is took a grinder, grind these things smooth so that they don't have the big lip on it. So basically these planetary gears, they're still able to spin, but they're gonna spin with the entire pin. A little tight because they don't have any oil in them, but they're still gonna spin completely around, and I did them nice and smooth so that even with that cover on here, I won't have to worry about that lip catching the cover, ripping it off, and throwing oil everywhere. Definitely not the best way to have it. So that's why I actually called my buddy Dirty Dave at Dirty Dave Customs. And as soon as I leave the Daytona truck meet, I'm gonna be stopping by his house and picking up a couple extra sets of planetaries so that I can go ahead and actually pull this part out of one of those planetaries and fix my axle the proper way. As far as this case itself, I'm gonna try to salvage what I can of it after I get the new set of planetaries. We'll go ahead and use the press over at my buddy Brian's house. He's got a big 50-ton press, and we'll press these pins out. Hopefully we can get them out. We might have to hide behind a sheet of plywood in case this thing decides to grenade on us. But we'll have to press these pins out, and then at least we'll probably have to clean out the insides of these gears a little bit. The pins are gonna be trashed, but hopefully I can salvage 3 planetary gears and this entire casing. So good stuff to have on hand that you can't really just go down to the store and get at Advanced Auto Parts or Napa. It was pretty interesting that there's no retainer rings or bearings at all involved with these specific planetary gears. Really all it is a metal pin, a big thick metal pin that is press fitted right into the case, goes right through the planetary gear, and it's got a little washer basically on either side, and I'm assuming that's probably just there so that when the planetary gear is spinning, it's not wearing on the case. So if I had to guess, that washer is probably a serviceable part. But yeah, there's nothing else to it. All you do is put this in a press and push these things right out. So now that I've ground this smooth, we're gonna go ahead and start putting it back together. It'll be okay for now. I don't want to go mud bogging the truck or truck pulling the truck like this, and the entire pin will spin with it. It's probably gonna waller out that hole, but as long as I don't do it too much, hopefully I won't wear out this case too much, and hopefully I'll be able to pick up 2 more cases from Dirty Dave Customs on the way home. So let's go ahead and start putting it back together and keep going with our Daytona crunch, as I call it. So now for putting it back together, I went ahead and cleaned off this entire sealing surface, just like I did when I was switching out the seals before. So now I'm gonna go ahead and put a nice new layer of RVT. We got the surfaces all cleaned up and I got a nice new layer of RVT. This is a good opportunity to do something I didn't think about until I put this together last time. So the drain on here is right here. This is where the drain hole is. Well, this hub, until you put that planet on here, it goes wherever you want it. So I went ahead and lined up my drain so that it matches the other side of the truck. So when I go through to swap out my fluids, it's gonna make it a lot easier. I won't have my drain holes in 4 different positions for each hub. If I can get these 2 to match, that narrows it down. Next time I take the front apart, I'm gonna do the same thing. Get it to where they're clocked in the same orientation. And they'll stay that way because this is a welded axle. I'll get into what that means at a different video. So let's go ahead, now that they're both matched up, the drain hole's in the same place, I'm going to pay attention to where that little mark is that we put in here to make sure everything lines back up in the same plane. And we're going to go ahead and slide that big heavy case back on here. Now we can go ahead and reinstall all of our bolts. Now that we've cleaned up this surface, now it's time for another layer of RVT on here for the cap. Now that we got our RVT on here, it's time to reinstall the cap. Remember, it's got that arrow on there pointing where the drain hole is, and now I have the drain hole back clocked about 1/4. So that's where it all needs to sit. All right, now I just got to finish bolting the sway bar that I started last night. We're cooking with bacon. So we let the RVT set up overnight, make sure it's all nice and sealed up. Now it's just a matter of filling her up and we're ready to rock. And just like that, the Daytona Crunch is over. Got the planet all fixed up, new cover on it. Kind of jerry-rigged it a little bit so we can move around, at least get to our parking spot. Have to be putting a new planetary on there probably next week. Got my sway bar all fixed. Got the gear switched out. We figured out what was going on with the stereo. I didn't even have the camera on for that one, so I was getting ready to swap them speakers out, and I just, for shits and giggles, decided to double check the amp and found out that I guess when we were bumping around in the mud hole, the amp got the switch flipped over to where it went from low to high, so it was only screaming out high-pitched music, so that's why we thought it was blown. So we don't even have blown speakers. All I do is flip a switch on an amp. Killing it. So now it's time to load this baby up and head to Daytona. If y'all enjoyed the video, please hit the like button at the bottom of your screen, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel.